on the grand night of July 29, 1840. Inside the opulent walls of Buckingham Palace, the wedding of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert was in full swing. The grand celebrations were for the people, a spectacle of royal union. But Victoria had something else entirely on her mind. As the festivities wound down, she led her new husband, Albert, not to the grand state bedroom as everyone expected, but to her own private chambers. This was a room she had slept in since she was a little girl, a space entirely her own. As the door closed, Victoria turned to Albert, her eyes filled with an intensity that was almost unsettling. Finally, she whispered, alone at last. What happened next was not an act of state, but an act of pure, unadulterated obsession. Victoria, the most powerful woman in the world, became completely fixated on her husband. She didn't just love Albert, she consumed him. That night she insisted on personally undressing him, an act unheard of for a monarch. She examined every detail of his form with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. She later wrote in her diary with breathless excitement about his beautiful smooth skin and fine shoulders. This wasn't just a wife admiring her husband. It was a collector admiring their most prized possession. This intense focus wasn't a fleeting wedding night passion. It was the beginning of a lifelong obsession that would define her reign and her very existence. The next morning, Victoria awoke before Albert. Instead of ringing for her ladies-in-waiting, she simply lay there, watching him sleep. She described the profound joy she felt just observing the rise and fall of his chest, listening to the sound of his breathing. To her, this was paradise. When he finally stirred, she greeted him with a fervor that was both endearing and slightly overwhelming. She wanted to know every thought, every feeling, every dream he had. Victoria's obsession began to manifest in every aspect of their life together. She couldn't bear to be separated from him, even for a moment. When Albert needed to attend to his own correspondence or studies, Victoria would often follow him, setting up her own desk right beside his. She would interrupt his work constantly, demanding his attention, his opinion, his affection. State meetings became a challenge. Albert wasn't in the room. Victoria was distracted, anxious, and irritable. Ministers quickly learned that to get the Queen's approval, they first needed to get Prince Albert on their side. He wasn't just her husband. He was her gatekeeper, her anchor, her entire world. This intense need for proximity created a unique dynamic within the palace. While it fostered an incredible closeness between the couple, it also began to isolate them. Victoria's world shrank until it contained only Albert. Her ladies-in-waiting, once her confidants, found themselves pushed to the periphery. Victoria's diary entries, once filled with details of court life and politics, became almost exclusively about Albert. What he wore, what he said, how he looked at her. She commissioned countless portraits, sculptures, and photographs of him, filling their private rooms with his image so that even when he was in the next room, she was surrounded by him. This behavior, which might seem controlling, stemmed from a deep-seated fear. Victoria had grown up in a lonely and restrictive environment known as the Kensington system. She was constantly watched, her every move controlled by her mother and Sir John Conroy. She had never known true, unconditional affection. With Albert, she found not only a partner, but a savior. He was the first person who belonged entirely to her, and she was terrified of losing him. Her obsession was a desperate attempt to hold on to the only real happiness and security she had ever known. The birth of their children only intensified this dynamic. Victoria famously disliked pregnancy and wasn't naturally maternal with her infants. She saw her children in some ways as rivals for Albert's attention. She would often express jealousy when Albert doted on the children, feeling a pang of insecurity that his love might be divided. She wanted to be the sole focus of his universe, just as he was the sole focus of hers. It was an all-consuming love that left little room for anyone or anything else. The palace became their gilded cage, a world built for two. Albert, for his part, handled Victoria's intense devotion with remarkable grace and patience. He understood her underlying anxieties and loved her deeply in return. He channeled her obsessive energy, guiding her in matters of state and art, and together they became a formidable team. He became, in essence, the king in all but name. He organized the household, reformed the royal finances, and became her most trusted advisor. He didn't just accept her obsession. He found a way to make it productive, to build a legacy from the sheer force of her devotion. He was the calm, steady center to her passionate, emotional storm. This symbiotic relationship was the engine of their shared life. Victoria's obsession fueled Albert's ambition, and his stability grounded her. They were two halves of a whole, so intertwined that it was impossible to imagine one without the other. Victoria herself wrote, "Without him, everything loses its interest." This wasn't an exaggeration. Every project, from the Great Exhibition of 1851 to the design of their homes at Osborne and Balmoral, was a joint venture born from their shared world. Their love story wasn't just a romance. It was a partnership that reshaped the British monarchy. But an obsession so powerful carries within it the seeds of immense tragedy. When Albert died suddenly in 1861, Victoria's world didn't just crumble. It ceased to exist. The object of her lifelong fixation was gone. The terror she had kept at bay for 2 decades became a reality. Her grief was as epic and all-consuming as her love had been. She plunged into a state of mourning so profound that it shocked the nation. She wore black for the rest of her life, and the vibrant, passionate queen was replaced by the solemn, reclusive widow of Windsor. Her obsession, once a source of strength and partnership, had become a prison of unending sorrow. The terrifying love she had for him in life was matched only by the terrifying grief she felt in his absence. A testament to a love that was truly and obsessively one of a kind.